everyone. We want to welcome you to the Deeper Dive podcast of Hopeville Church, where we take the message from the weekend and keep the conversation going during the week. I am not Dan Davis. I am Cathy Davis, and I'm here in the Great Lakes Bay region of Mid-Michigan. And today, I'm joined by Sam Burke.
Hi.
That was cute how you just jumped in there. You're my co-host today, and because you taught yesterday, you've got all the info, so we're going to talk about all the things.
Yes.
And so that's all we had to say. That's what Dan told me I'm supposed to say at the intro, so we're good to go. We're good to go, Sammy.
I'm ready.
So, thanks for yesterday. It was really good.
It was fun.
I love seeing those pictures of you up there.
Oh, my goodness. I had to ask my mom. I said, can you find any pictures of me when I was little, like old 80s?
Yeah.
So those are the ones she came up with. I was like, oh.
Yeah, and yet, you know what? Moms hate that kind of stuff because then you're like on the spot. You're like, no, they're in a shoebox in the basement somewhere, honey.
They were hanging up on the wall, and I knew they were.
Oh, your mom. So I said this to you yesterday, though. When I saw that picture of you in front of the Christmas tree, it reminded me, the way you look reminds me of your middle child, Jonathan.
Yes.
Have you said that before, that of your three kids,
Ever
the two
since
of you are,
he was a baby, everybody said, he looks just like you. And I'm like, yeah. When he was really little, like, we would compare pictures and go, oh my goodness, he is like an identical. Personality-wise, he's a little different than me. He's probably more like my dad.
Okay.
Because my dad has really undiagnosed ADHD, we think. And so Jonathan and him are a lot alike. Personality-wise, humor-wise, all that kind of stuff. Karis and I are more alike personality-wise. So anyway.
Well, who's like Sarah, your wife?
Nick, my oldest. Oh, my goodness. They're like carbon copies of each other.
Oh, they are?
Oh, yeah. They look alike and they act alike. And Sarah goes, it's like looking in a mirror and it's devastating.
Yeah, devastating. Do you think your kids look like each other?
In certain times, yes. And like Karis and Jonathan probably look more alike and act more alike and are more like buddy that way. Nick looks like Sarah's side of the family.
Okay, yeah.
Except for the hair and the nose. Everything else is Sarah's side of the family.
The hair is so funny because this is what he gets from you, though. The particularity. He's very particular about his hair, isn't he?
Yeah, he didn't used to be. He used to just be like, cut it, whatever. Let's
I know.
Go.
Well, he's in high school now.
And now he's like, and he just came to me the other day. He goes, I want to try to retrain my hair. He's going to kill me for telling this. He goes, I want to retrain my hair so it goes up and back, kind of like yours.
Oh, like yours.
My boys have always been like, we don't want hair like yours. You have an old man haircut.
Right.
And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Right. But now he's coming around.
And now he's like, how do I use like hair product in my hair and stuff? And I'm like, oh, he's high school. He cares about how
stocking
he looks
stuffers right there.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to see this. All right, so now we know about the Burkes. I want to talk to you more about some of the things you might do in your family around Christmas later. But I thought we got to jump into this whole cancel culture thing.
Oh, no.
It's kind of like
I opened the door. I know.
Well, okay, so because here's the thing. It helped me yesterday. We're not going to deep end this. We're just going to zero entry pool on this. We're just going to tip our toes in the water of cancel culture and how you drew the parallels between that and maybe boycotting. Because in my language, boycotting was something I kind of understood better because this generation seems to come out with words like gaslighting, like cancel culture, like all these things that I have to Google to keep up with. Like, I don't want to do something wrong or misunderstand what someone's saying. So it gets so confusing. So to see you on a stage yesterday talk about cancel culture within the parameters of church, I thought it was really good because, so give us kind of maybe a summary again of cancel culture and why you chose to bring it up yesterday.
Yeah, so cancel culture, if you've been on the internet and if you've been in social media, it's just in your face all the time.
Yeah,
and people
but we don't know it's called that, right?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people do.
Okay, go.
I think it might even be a millennial and below age thing where they just talk about it and everybody knows what it is. So that's why I wanted to define it because maybe there's some people, like my parents would be on Facebook, but they would go cancel culture. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But I wanted to define it because I think everybody, once they hear the definition, goes, oh, yeah, that's what we're talking about. Like why they changed names for football teams and this kind of stuff. Like, so, yeah, cancel culture is just this idea that there are things in society that have been wrong. They've been wrong from, way back. We've never corrected them. So now's the time to correct them. We're either going to get rid of it or we're going to change it and make it something different.
Right.
So, like I said yesterday, I think there's a lot of things that were good as you start out thinking about this. Like, wow, why did we let this go on for so long?
Yeah.
Like, when the Me Too movement started, it's like, why did we allow this to go on for so long in culture? And people were like, we've had it. I've had enough of it.
Right.
Let's figure out how to, get rid of it. But I think the culture and the vibe we live in right now is just like, yeah, let's get rid of everything we don't like. Yeah. Everything that I don't like, I don't like that. Get rid of it. I don't like that. Get rid of it. And then it's like, what do you have left when it's all opinion based? So I've been feeling this for a while.
Yeah.
And some people are like, well, that's just one side of the aisle problem. It's not my side, whatever. But I wanted to draw parallels to like boycotting stuff. No, like this is a thing we've been dealing with. Whenever we don't like something and we have a preference, a lot of times we go, let's get rid of it. Mm-hmm. Instead of having this nuanced conversation. I think in our culture today, we've lost the ability to have a nuanced conversation.
Right.
We've lost the ability to go, well, that's not my preference, but my preference doesn't reign supreme.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because my relatives are in Northern Virginia. Mm-hmm. So one, they took down some kind of statue in Charlottesville.
Right.
And then they renamed the football team.
Right.
That was big. So it's interesting now. I'm just adding to my data points, right?
Right.
But so here's the thing, though. There are, like you said, certain things that maybe deserve to be canceled. And maybe it's gone on for a long time, but that doesn't mean it should stay.
Right.
So we can say, hey, can we all agree that this is not good?
Right.
And same with the boycotting. So the nuance, I guess, is what you're trying to point us to is can't we just talk about it without making a hard and fast black and white? It's just out. The minute you might get a little uncomfortable or might feel a little bit like this is maybe offending someone somewhere, we're just going to cancel it.
Yeah. So I had a point to talking about it. I just don't want to talk about it.
No, I understand it. I know where we're going.
Yeah. But I think it's very interesting. It's like you're looking at, like in the story, here's Herod. And he's like, he's feeling threatened.
Yes.
And so immediately his response is this harsh.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where we are today. There's like this, whenever things are threatening, we go, no, we need to get rid of that.
Right.
But everything is threatening today.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to kind of bring up. Like,
right.
Look, here's these little babies. He murders all these 2-year-olds and below, these boys. It's like, did all of them threaten you? Like, really?
Yeah.
But it's like, well, I couldn't figure out the one, so I'm going to cancel everything. Like, it's just.
Right.
And I think that's what made me go, I think I want to talk about this because we're at this point now where it's like, we're going to throw literally the baby out with the bathwater and go, we're just going to get rid of everything because everything is, not my preference. Everything offends me. Everything is threatening to me. So let's just throw everything out.
Right.
And it's like, we are acting more like Herod in the story nowadays.
Right.
Where it's like, we're trying to like be our own thing. It just, I was like, I got to talk about it. And how do I talk about it without being like, hey, let's politically stay on one side of the fence or another. Let's just throw it all out there. We're all guilty of doing this.
Right.
And we all have let our preferences eke into the threatening world,
But let's just say, too, before we leave this, there is value in us as Christ followers to not support or to stay away from things that we think might dishonor God or dishonor our witness as worshipers and witnesses. Mm-hmm. Like, you would agree with that, right? Like, it's not just we're not going to cancel anything, because we have a right to feel strongly about some things.
Right.
And, you know what I was thinking about?
Yeah. What?
Yeah.
I don't know what you were thinking about.
Do you know what deja vu is?
Yes.
Like, not the words, but a place.
Yes.
Like on Bay Road.
Right.
Like, it's not a good thing.
Right.
Like, every time I pass it, I'm like praying, like, God, this is not honoring to the people inside. It's not honoring to you. Okay, this is like a total rabbit trail. So, like, I'm like, I can cancel that. Like, or can't I, I'm not going there, but I'm also not going to give my money to something that would support that because I feel like it's dishonoring to God. Right. So making those choices, you're not saying that would be.
No, and I'm also not saying that canceling things is wrong, because I do think there are some things, like I said yesterday, there are things that, some people are like, why would we cancel it? I'm like, that's a good thing to have a conversation about. Maybe we should get rid of it. Like, it's like sexism in the workplace.
Right.
Like, that should be a conversation.
Right.
Like, we should not go, well, whatever. Like, and I think there's these two extremes: cancel everything, or no, don't cancel anything. It's like, okay, can we look at these things and go, okay, what's healthy?
Yeah.
What can promote unity, what can promote equality, what can promote this stuff. And let's have a conversation about it, not just rush to one end of the extreme or the other end of the extreme.
Got it.
So that's kind of where what I wanted to kind of throw out there yesterday, but I wanted to introduce, try to find a way of today that could introduce the topic in a way that would really kind of make everybody feel something.
Yeah, right.
Because I knew as soon as I said those words, some people are going to be like, why is he talking about this? But I was like, hey, it's something that we can kind of take from today and go, is that really what was going on back then? Is that really what he was trying to do back then? And that, I think it is.
All right. Right. So let's go back to then Matthew 2. Where you were yesterday.
Yep.
And I love how you just painted some of the context and reminded us or told us for the first time who Matthew was writing to.
Right.
And then gave us all of the history surrounding who these magi were as maybe not kings, not the same number, maybe not at the same time that the shepherds were going to see Jesus.
Right.
So there was a whole bunch of tweaks to what we maybe thought was the story. So I found that to be highly valuable. So I'm like, so give it to us as one of our pastors. When I'm studying the Bible on my own, or when I'm wanting to add layers to a story, more depth, how do I find out that information? And again, why should I?
Let me answer the why question before the how.
Okay.
So the why question is a little bit of what I talked about at the end of the message, which we'll probably get to.
Yeah.
There are these things that we've just been told, or stories that we've been familiarized with that we just kind of take at face value.
Yeah.
And sometimes they kind of shift in our mind the narrative to think about things in a certain way.
Yes.
And then we end up believing things that in a certain way that eventually, if they end up falling apart, we end up falling apart faith-wise. And so I've been working with, young adults and, teenagers for a long time. And what I want to do is help set them up in a way that their faith won't fall apart when things get challenged that were like story elements, like
or based on tradition
stuff,
and that was never meant to be a foundation for faith.
Right. Absolutely. So that's why I even wanted to tell the story of these guys were coming to like crown a king. It wasn't like they were coming to worship like we would sense. That's why I said, like, Matthew knew something. He was like, I know something that you don't.
Yeah,
like,
I love when you said that. I love that.
Because he wants to help provide some atmosphere of like, these guys were finding out in real time, oh, this is something different.
Yeah.
Like, they came to the palace thinking this is where the king's going to be. And they're like, wait, what?
Right.
The king isn't born in the palace?
Right.
What are we looking for here? So there's just parts of this story that like are really helpful to understand the realisticness of it. Like, these guys are astrologers. God can use these wacky things in a story to help us understand, like, this is how he wants to introduce his son into the world. So these guys who are, we would look at and go, they're kind of kooky. They're looking at the stars and like whatever to try to figure out what's going on in the world. And, but that's what they were doing. And, were they playing tarot cards or something? I don't know. But God uses these guys. And so here they come and they become a part of this story that actually helps get Jesus to where he needs to be in Egypt to fulfill this prophecy that had they not come, had Herod not got angry, this wouldn't have taken place. So I just think it's fascinating to see how God uses different nuances of the story. But I think the why is because I want people to understand the realness of this story and how sometimes we can kind of look, oh, here's the wise men, and they came with their gifts. And but the reality of here's these guys looking for, like, we have come to crown this king. We've heard about him because of, all these people that used to be slaves in our country that were talking about this and talking about it, and it was written about, and finally, like, something's happening. We want to go see what's going on. And they do. Just the realness of the story and how, like, here's what I don't want people to get in their mind is, oh, here's this, manger scene, and here's these shepherds on one side, and here's these wise men on the other side.
That's what mine is. I got to take them out. I mean, I had always heard a rumor that it wasn't, historically accurate, but yesterday added some real data points for me as to why and what the real accuracy might be. So I had to move
was probably around
them.
2 years old when this is going on. That's why it's like 2 years old and under.
Yeah.
We don't really know, but it's probably closer to 2 than 2 days, because if you put the story together, you're going, okay, a lot happened between Jesus' birth 8 days after where they present him in the temple. So they've got to go to Jerusalem and then they come back. There's got to be a lot going on. There's a house, which, I've read a bunch of accounts about, like, was it really in a stable or was it in a house in the back? Like, were they with Joseph's family and they just didn't have room for him in the house?
Oh,
like,
I see.
To have a baby. So, like, there's all kinds of different things that could have been going on. But we get in this manger scene with the stable and all that stuff. And here's the wise men on one side with the camels, and here's the shepherds with the sheep on the other side. The reality is it's probably very different looking than that,
And that's okay.
Yeah,
but it's okay to, again, have that conversation without our faith falling apart just because the wise men weren't there at the same time as the shepherds.
But most people don't. Most people have in their minds, this is the Christmas story. This equals that. This equals that. And so therefore, this is how it had to have happened.
Right. I love the fact that the Magi weren't kings, because like my nativity has them with crowns
they all do,
on.
and it's all tradition.
And so I love that they were maybe a little kooky, because like the astrologers know, as Christians, we cancel them for sure.
Right.
So we knew the shepherds were like a little bit weird that the angel appeared to them, but it's also the astrologers. It's almost a double story there, that God had that star come up, so he's communicating to everyone.
So who did God invite to meet his son? He invited some smelly shepherds that were outcasts, and some guys who were like not looking. They were looking to put like tarot cards out and try to figure this out. He didn't invite the religious leaders, and he didn't invite the kings.
Right.
These people, like I just think that's so fascinating.
Yes, I love that we can sit there long enough, hopefully around your Christmas dinner table. There's a conversation for you. Why can't we talk about that? Let's talk about that. So so then back up a little bit to how do we find out some of these information?
So some of that is just by careful reading.
Just go slow enough.
So if you go through the story and you read through it and you go, okay, here's these wise men from the east, and you're going, okay, so who are these people? Like, you got to do a little digging to figure that out. But
digging where?
So I did a bunch of digging through. I have commentaries and all kinds of stuff, but some of it is just a Google search.
Okay.
If you do a quick Google search of the story of the wise men, the first two things that pop up are going to be historically accurate stuff about the wise men.
Okay.
And it'll say, this is the church tradition. This is how we come to believe this. There's two different versions of the story. There's the Orthodox Eastern version. There's Western view of the story. So the Orthodox Eastern version is there were 12 wise men.
Okay.
The Western version is 3 wise men. It's all based upon the gifts.
Right.
The Eastern version is based upon the number 12 and how that's always been significant, from the disciples to the tribes to all that stuff. There's all kinds of fascinating things what we've done traditionally with the church.
Right.
When you dig into the real story, though, they talk about this is how you would know that these are these people and all this stuff. And so it's, do a quick Google search. It'll really pop up pretty easily. You'll find out from some pretty smart people of how the story really went.
Do you have a go-to commentary that if you're looking for levels that you like the best, or you don't want to point that way?
I have probably 2 or 3 on my shelf they're a little older, like the Zondervan NIV Bible commentary is pretty good.
Okay.
I can't remember.
Would you suggest that people get a study Bible because they have all those notes?
Sometimes, but it all depends. So here's what I've come to realize about study Bibles.
Yeah.
It's only as good as the people who did the research.
Yeah.
Right? So everybody who writes a study Bible has a theological slant to them. So you have to know what their theological slant is in order to understand where they're coming from. Because we all approach the Bible as interpreters, every single one of us. And we all approach it with glasses on that have, we see the Bible through. Even the scholars, they all have their own theological leanings one way or another. So how they interpret, even the guys who help interpret different versions of the Bible have their own theological leanings.
Yeah,
so,
right.
So if you're reading like the ESV, for example, they're going to be more Reformed tradition people that have helped interpret. So they're going to interpret different passages differently. So it's all about, like, and you can Google search that too, like who did what and what are their theological leanings. Because then you'll understand, they're going to talk about this way.
Right.
They're going to talk about this way. So I have a love-hate relationship with those kind of Bibles that have like all this stuff in them, because I'm really reading someone else's opinions a lot of times.
Okay, right. But there's another good conversation starter. Like, what do you do when you want to when you know people who study the Bible, ask them. Like, you know who I wish was here right now is Sandy Klein, because she's someone I really look up to who studies the Word at deeper levels. Like I'm gonna have to give her a call and say, what do you use when you're studying and reading? So, and maybe I could ask Dan. You know, he does a little research.
Right. Yeah.
So
the best thing I've ever done is I've had I read books that disagree with each other.
Why is that?
Because it gives me multiple views on the same thing. And then it really causes me to ask myself, okay, so what do I believe?
Yeah.
And what do I think about this?
Right.
Because here's this expert, quote unquote, on this side of this situation. Here's this other expert. They're viewing the same thing and coming to different conclusions. Why do they come to their different conclusions? And I have to really then, use my own brain to go, okay, do I think it's this, or is there somewhere in the middle that it's, they're both seeing something similar. What is that similar thing? So.
Right, and that can lead us closer to the heart of God.
Right.
The idea isn't that we would be drawn astray to some warped thinking. It's that we're really going to wrestle with God through issues, and how could that not be honoring to Him?
Absolutely, and it keeps us from echo chamber thinking, So.
Explain what that is, quick.
So that would be like, I grew up in a theological setting. I always will believe that theological setting. I will never ask questions about it. I'll never challenge it. I will always think this way. Someone comes and tries to say something, no, blah, 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 and I'm not listening, kind of a deal.
Yeah.
So I don't want to ever be that.
Yeah.
Because I want to be challenged in how I think, to either what I believe is what I believe, or maybe I've never ever thought about something different. And so challenge myself in that and go, hey, where did I come out on the other end?
And we are in community.
Yes.
So that we get to rub off the rough edges off of each other and have the safety to ask those questions.
Absolutely.
And if we start veering off into crazy land, we've got community who can go, hey, Bubba, let's think about this again.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I got another question. Magi, coronation, crowning, Herod, canceling. Those are both like this side of the spectrum, one side, the other. Then I was thinking about the middle. And I was thinking about those of us that might feel in the middle. Like, and then I was thinking, that's like the people in the Jewish think tank that you talked about. Like, they should have been super excited when the Magi come, say, hey, we're here to see the king.
Right.
And then they're like, oh, yeah.
Right.
So what's the middle look like?
That's the part I left out of my message yesterday.
Boom.
So I had a third. And I was like, I don't have time.
I'm giving you time.
So the third option is the complacent. So
that was the word I came up with too. Go.
Yeah, so there's the crowning, and then there was the canceling. Then there's the complacent, the ones who should be excited about it but aren't.
Yeah.
The ones who find themselves in this Christmas mundane thing.
Yeah.
Where they're like, yeah, we've heard the story. We know what's supposed to happen. We know all this stuff. Whatever kind of a deal. It's kind of like we're just going through the motions. And that's those guys. They're like, you would think that they would have been excited.
Yes.
Herod goes, hey, where's the Messiah supposed to be born? You would think, radar, what? Who's asking that question? Like, okay, maybe this is a deal. But there's something going on with them.
Right.
It's kind of like, well, what's the point? And I do really wonder if they were scared.
Okay.
I mean, this dude was unhinged, like crazy. When you read about him and you read about even his, successors, they just were these crazy, power-hungry, like they've been given a little bit of power and taken it way too far kind of a deal. And so you read about it and you're like, why would you kill your wife and your own kids to maintain your power? And it's like, okay, well, this guy is really... Yeah. So the people he's gathered around him are more than likely yes men.
Okay.
And they're more than likely going, yeah, sure, because he's probably going to kill off those who aren't. And they're just kind of like, and maybe, like I said yesterday, maybe this is like the 100th time that he's like, let's chase down somebody. And they're just like, oh my goodness. Like,
here we go again.
Here we go again. So sure, this is where he's supposed to be born. Sure that, like, I don't really know. That's just me kind of pontificating, but you would think that they'd be a little more excited, but they're just not.
Right.
They just kind of are going, well, I guess this is where he's born.
But they knew the history, like they knew the Jewish Torah.
Yes.
And they knew what they were looking for. And the Magi didn't.
Right.
They were those weird tarot card readers or whatever. And their interest was heightened. Like, we got to figure it out.
Doesn't that say something, though?
Yeah. So tell me what it says to you.
What it says to me is that you can know the scriptures and still not engage with them.
Yeah.
And that sometimes people who don't even know the scriptures are more excited about seeking out Jesus than we are who know the scriptures, which is a sad reality.
Yeah.
But it's a reality that's pointed to over and over again in the Gospels.
Yeah.
It's pointed to over and over again in the New Testament, that the people who knew the scriptures the best missed it.
Yeah.
Because they weren't really looking for it. They were satisfied in their own knowledge of what was going on and not in the seeking of who the Messiah really was.
Yeah. So give us a word. If we're like, in all honesty, listening to this podcast going, I think I am that. I think I'm in the middle. Like, tell me, I think I know the scriptures. I study the scriptures. Yeah. I think I'm looking for him, but
it's the same. It's why I said what I said in the second point of my application, where I'm asking, Jesus, help me unfamiliarize myself with it. Because when we get too familiar with things, we kind of become complacent with them.
Okay.
Right. So the more I know of the stories, I'm like, yeah, I know. Like Dan and I have this conversation almost every year. Like, how do we retell the Christmas story?
Right.
Every year we do the same. Like, how do we teach the Christmas story in a way that's fresh? Mm-hmm. Because if we just continually just do the same thing over and over, people are going to like, yeah. Angels, shepherd, Joseph, Mary, Jesus. We get it. Like,
right.
For 2,000 years, it's been the same story. True, but when we get to that point where we're like, oh, we're so complacent with the story that we're like, whatever, I can skip over that. I think we miss big opportunities of what God wants to do in our lives.
Right.
And I think that's the word for someone who's like, oh, I know the scriptures. I study them all the time. Like, I've got it all up here. But it's like, is it really impacting here, in your heart? Is it impacting your life the way it should?
Right.
Or are we just kind of skipping through and going, yeah, I know it.
Right.
Kind of a deal.
Okay, I want to get back to that for a second, but I'm going to go to your first point of application first.
Yeah.
That where you said because I think there's a tie-in here about your application may be you need to come to him.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about it, and again, maybe trying to not do the familiar,
right?
But think of what is really true,
right?
And the coming to him for me for a long time was the magic words,
right?
The coming to him is an intellectual assent. Intellectual assent to who Jesus was,
right?
And acknowledging that I am not God, he is, acknowledging that I can't save myself, but he can,
right.
That he died on the cross in my place, and there was an intellectual, okay, I can see that, but I don't know if that's what God really, if that's the entirety of what God is asking me to do,
right.
Is that intellectual assent versus a heart transfer of trust and faith and worship.
Right.
So tell me what you think about that, because I've been sitting in that for a while.
Yeah, so I love the story of the wise men because they came looking for something and they found something else.
Yeah.
Right? So they came looking for a king that they thought they were going to crown, which they did, but they found a savior.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, the intellectual, like, where's the Messiah supposed to be born? I'm supposed to know this. I'm supposed to know this. I'm supposed to say these magic words, all this stuff. I think that's a few and far between reality for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. I think that's more of stuff that we wrestle with on the internal side of the church. I think for most people, it's like they're looking for something in their life, and then they find Jesus.
Yeah.
And God goes, ta-da, this is what you've been missing. This is what you're looking for. And they cannot put into words.
Yeah.
I was looking for the Messiah.
Right.
They were like, we were looking for the king, and we found, I was looking for something that was missing in my life, and I found that Jesus was the thing that I was missing. And I think for a lot of, I go back to a lot of baptism testimonies. Like when you're sitting with somebody, especially like, someone who's lived some of their life already.
Yeah.
And then they come to Jesus and they're like, I didn't know the right words. I didn't know what I was looking for, but all of a sudden it was like God spoke to me and was like, hey, this is what you need in your life.
Right.
And I love the fact that the Magi didn't do it right.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't go, hey, we looked up the scriptures and the scriptures told us this and that. No, they were like, we just came looking for something and we came to offer our gift. I was talking to someone at our church yesterday. I said, don't you find it like hilarious that here these Magi come with these gifts?
Yeah.
And we're going to give these gifts to the king, and they walked away with a bigger gift. And I think that's a little bit of like what people do. They go, well, I need to give something to God. And God said, no, you don't understand.
Yeah.
I'm going to give something to you. And you're going to find out in this whole thing that you're going to keep giving, but you're like, I can't outgive God because God just gave me the greatest gift ever. So I love
that.
the stories of people who are like, I can't articulate fully. It's like John chapter 9, the blind guy who receives his sight. And he's like, I don't know. I don't know how all this happened. Like, all I know is that one day I was blind and this guy spit in the mud, put it on my face, and now I can see.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I've always loved that. So it's like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, they kept pressing him, like, give us the formula, give us the direction. And he's like, look, I don't know what to tell you.
My favorite line in the whole thing is like, you guys are asking a lot of questions. Do you want to follow him too? Like, because this has been pretty radical. Like, so I just love that because here's a guy who's like, I don't know what just happened.
Yeah.
All I know is that my life is completely different and completely changed, and that's what I can articulate in this moment.
Right.
It's the same thing, you know, John chapter 1, Philip goes to Nathanael and he's like, hey, we think we met the Messiah. And he's like, really? Come on. Like, who is this guy? He's like, I don't know. He's Jesus of Nazareth. And Nathaniel's like skeptical. He's like, no.
Yeah.
You don't understand the Bible because that can't happen. That doesn't come from here. And then he meets him face to face and he's like, how do you know me? How do you know all this stuff? And Jesus is like, you think that's cool. Just wait.
Yeah.
So here's this guy who has his ducks in a row who thinks he knows it. You didn't say the magic words, Jesus. You didn't come from the magic places that I think you should have. And Jesus is like, oh, yeah, well, just wait. I'm going to blow your mind even more because it's not always the way you think.
Right.
Like, so
King might look different than what you thought. Conquering hero might look different than what you thought.
You were looking for this, but you found a savior instead.
Yeah.
And I think that's the point of the story. And that's what I love about people's stories is like, I was looking for this, but I found Jesus.
Right.
And it's like...
Yeah, and so I feel like the other thing Dan and I were talking about recently that we've talked about in this series too is the whole idea of invitation and the whole idea of come and see. And I was thinking about different stories in Scripture about that. Even the blind guy with the mud and whatever. It's kind of like, do you want to know him too? Like, and I feel like in our lives in 2021 in the Great Lakes Bay region, I want my life to be about come and see.
Yep.
You know, come and see. I don't know how to explain it sometimes to you, but God has changed my life.
Yep.
And so let's be in community together and let's trust that God's going to show up in that and you're going to see who he is.
Yep. It's that invitation of come and worship.
Oh
come and worship. You know, it's
Love
like
it. Love it. Okay. The deeper, know God deeper. I want you to say it out loud for the people in the back that when you say you want to non-familiarize yourself with the VeggieTales Jesus, with the Sunday school Jesus, I need you to say it for us, if it's true, that there is some value in the way that we were brought up and the things I learned from the VeggieTales.
Absolutely.
Like, we're not going to throw it all out.
No.
Because, and then so how do we know what to hold on to and what to let go of?
I think you let Scripture tell you.
Okay.
So that was my point. My point is like, what I don't want to see when I try to encounter Jesus through the Scriptures is like everybody else's version of him. Yeah. There are things that I have been shown and told in flannel graph, Sunday school, all that stuff that are absolutely true. What I don't want is I don't want it to skew my mind on this is what Jesus is, like who he was. Like, so I read a book, my freshman year in college. It was by a guy named Philip Yancey. It's a book called The Jesus I Never Knew. Yeah. And he writes in the book about, looking at these velvet Jesus pictures and all this stuff. And Jesus is this white guy with blonde hair and blue eyes and all this stuff. And he starts reading through the New Testament, and he's like, this doesn't look like that. Like, his picture of Jesus in his mind and his, all the stories didn't match up totally with the Jesus he was encountering in Scripture. And so through the whole book, he's like, I want to get to know the Jesus I never knew. Yeah. And I think that book has shaped my thought process as I think of Jesus. As I think of all of the cultural things and all this stuff, like, it's real easy for me to go, oh, I know Jesus. Jesus is Passion of the Christ Jesus. Yes. Or I know Jesus. Jesus is flannel graph Jesus with the white robe with the blue sash. Like, what I don't want that to be my, I want Scriptures to inform me of who Jesus is. I want Jesus to use them to go, this is who I am. Right. And even in the hard parts, even the stuff where you're reading going, he said that for real?
Right.
Like that might have been hard to follow.
Right.
And versus I already know he said that. That's easy to follow because at the end of the day, he's just flannel graph Jesus, or he's just that. Like, I don't want that. So that's what when I say be unfamiliar, I don't want to be so familiar that I'm like, oh, I can pass over that other stuff and just kind of ignore some of the things to get to the familiar things.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by that.
Oh my gosh. Okay. There was one more thing. Can we just have like a post thing? Because this whole concept of being on the throne of our own lives,
right,
and not being able to relinquish that because we're kind of comfortable up there,
right,
and like Herod was, right, but we want Jesus on the throne of our life. Here's the conflict for me, and you've got about 12 seconds to answer it, so no problem. It's like, the truth is we're never on the throne of our lives. Like, that is kind of a lie that we tell ourselves, or that Satan's whispered in our ear, because this is what I think. Before Christ, I was a slave to sin.
Right.
And after Christ, I'm now a slave to righteousness. The word that goes through there both is slave.
Yep.
I was never king of my own life. I was imposter king anyways.
Right.
Am I right on that?
Yes.
I was going to run that one by Dan, and I'm like, I do not want to hear 45 minutes on this. I got to, I don't know if that is theologically correct.
I think we lie to ourselves and say that we're in charge of our own lives.
Yes.
I think that we tell ourselves we're the king. I think that we are I told someone this yesterday afterwards. I said, I think we're like the wise men. We're a lot more like Herod than we think.
Yeah.
And that we'd like to admit.
Yeah.
Because when, push comes to shove and God goes, I really want to challenge you on that because you're not really the king. Yeah. And it's like, no, but I am.
Yeah.
I sit on my own throne. I'm fine.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, you're just the imposter that someone else has set up there. So Herod, I think he was Syrian. And I think he was set up, I think history tells us, he was set up by the Romans in that area to be in charge. But he wasn't even really the king.
Yeah.
He had no real power.
Okay.
His power was given to him by the Romans. They could have taken it away. He was there to keep the peace with the people. The Jewish people were afraid of him. The Romans were kind of like, he's
laughable.
Whatever, you know. You're really under our government. So if you do something we don't like, we'll come in and wipe you out.
Yeah.
So he had really no power. He had the littlest amount of power that went to his head.
Yeah.
But he's really an imposter king.
Yeah.
And I think that is, for me, that's the takeaway, that anytime I think I'm the king of my own life, I'm just the imposter king.
Yeah.
That someone has deceived me and lied to me. Maybe even I lied to myself, telling me that throne's mine.
Yeah.
But it's never really ours.
See, there you go. So, okay, closing up. You got 3 kids in your house. You're about to celebrate Christmas, and you want to bring the freshness of the Christmas real story to them. So give me a way you're doing that. Speak to the young families today who are just kind of panicked, like, I don't know, it's all about Santa at this point. Santa and the Christmas Eve service and a couple coloring pages. I don't know.
Yeah. So I did something, and you were clued in on this yesterday. I did something that I used to do a long time ago for our youth ministry kids, because I was like, so are they even paying attention? So
during the
service, whatever. So I told them, as I was prepping my message, I said, I have some key words in there that I want you to pick up on, that will be something that they would be familiar with. So they are way into this game, Among Us. Okay, it's a video game, and it's like, there are these spacemen on a ship, and there's an alien who's an imposter among them, and all this stuff, and they got to figure out who it is, and they're doing stuff, and the imposter's killing everybody, and they're trying to figure out who the imposter is and all this stuff. So I told them, I said, just look for some keywords. So I knew that I was going to talk about the imposter king and all this stuff, so I just threw a bunch of this Among Us language into it. So my kids were like, oh, you talked about, and they came up to me afterwards, and Sarah was like, they paid attention the whole time until the whole story. I'm like, okay. I guess that works. It was a lot of fun. Well, funny story, last night, I'm a 7th grade small group leader for the 7th grade boys, and they all came up to me, every single one of them. You used Among Us language, didn't you?
Oh, and you didn't even tell them to have a heads up.
No, I didn't. And so I'm like, all my 7th grade boys were paying attention during the message.
Yeah.
As soon as they heard that language, it's like, oh, this is language that speaks across that spectrum to all these kids. And they were like, you talked about canceling, you talked about imposter, you talked about this. I'm like, You're right, I did. And you paid attention.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, it's just engaging. Trying to engage your family at whatever stage they're at. Have conversations with them. And, it's going to be a good week.
It's getting to know your kids,
yeah.
right? The more you know what they're into, the more you know, the easier it is you can have a conversation with them. The easier it is you can bring something like that into their reality. Mm-hmm. And it's funny how, like, it's simple, but we don't ever think it's simple. We think, oh, this is so hard.
Right.
I have to sit around the dinner table and painfully do family devotion.
Yeah.
But sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's just a quick little conversation in the car. Sometimes it's a word here, a word there. It's something, to make them kind of go, oh, this is interesting. I can't pay attention to this. So.
Absolutely. Well, Hopevale, this is good. It's Christmas week. So Burke family, Hopevale families, we hope you have a great week celebrating Jesus. So this has been the Deeper Dive podcast, such as it is. We will not be here next week because post-Christmas whatever.
Right.
And then at the new year, I think we can have something super exciting to talk about. You might see Sam back here with some other people.
Yes.
Because it's good stuff, right?
Yes, it's great. Yeah.
So Merry Christmas, Hopevale, and we'll see you next time when we take a deeper dive.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you for watching the Deeper Dive video podcast. To check out our full library, make sure to subscribe by clicking the button below. Also make sure to select the bell icon in order to be notified of any new content as it is posted. If you would like to give to the Lord here at Hopevale and support the ministry, you can give by visiting hopevale.org/give. Thank you again for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you and your family at Hopevale Church.